So I'm Justin Tancrel. I live in Kendal. I've always lived in the South Lakes, and as Steve has referred to, I've been in uniform now for 26 years. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to be able to speak to a cohort, a really important cohort, like I've got a chance to today, and therefore it's a real privilege for me to be able to do that. I've been in command for a year, and the army I joined 26 years ago is very, very different to the army of today. We recruit from a very different generation of people. The culture is very different, and also the recruiting environment per se is a real challenge to us. So retention is more important than ever before. So it's a fantastic opportunity for me to be able to look you in the eye and say and to plead to you to support not only my soldiers but also any reservist, anybody who's willing to step forward and say, I'd like to be a reservist and do this, in my part time. And hopefully, what I've got to say, and you'll be glad to know, it's only for 5 minutes, but hopefully by the end of it, you'll be better informed. So the Army's strength today in the regular service is 78,000. And reservists numbers 28,000. They are fully integrated in order to meet the demands of UK defence. That is to act as a deterrence, to train foreign armies against queens of the enemy like Daesh, and then finally to help our emergency services and to provide support to UK operations. For example, and you'll all be aware, the local floods was the last time our unit supported the local emergency services. The reserves then have always been an essential part of the British Army, and without the capable Army Reserve we would be far more vulnerable as a nation. There is no template for one of my reservist soldiers. They are a real colourful mix of people. In my unit, for example, they are split down as follows: 5% are students, 12% are unemployed, 16% are self-employed, and that leaves 66% who are employed in your businesses, in your small and large businesses. But they all have one thing in common, and that is they are self-starters, they're highly motivated, and they are keen to demonstrate that and be part of the local community. Most Army Reserves live very close to one of the many recruit centres. So there are 10 within my regiment, all the way from Carlisle, Workington, Barrow, Kendal, Lancaster, and then down to Blackburn, Blackpool, Preston, Liverpool and Manchester. The reserves are split into two parts: specialists and generalists. Specialists, as you can imagine, are highly qualified professionals, whether they be medical, linguists, intelligence analysts or cyber specialists, and very topical that is today. I employ generalists. Generalists can be infanteers, they can work in logistics or engineering. But my battalion are light royal infanteers, and that concept hasn't changed since they were first formed in 1680 to support William of Orange. And that will never change, because we have to support the government of the day in whatever their intent may be. So when I refer back to 2011, I had the privilege to command a company in Helmand, and I had 8 reservists attached to my 60 soldiers. We were flown into northwest Malgir in Helmand, and our mission was simply to defeat the Taliban within a particular operations box. This leads me to 2 key points. Firstly, that my reservists that I employed, the reservists that may be working in your organisations, were as good as my regular brethren. And in some cases, those reservists were actually better, because personal individual courage, for all the training you can do, it can't be trained, it's inherent, it's inside you. And some of my reservists were naturally braver than some of my better trained regular cohort, and I needed that very much. So the extra firepower I got from just those few reservists made a heck of a difference. The second relevant point is that we fought most days in view of British forts built 130 years ago in the second Afghan campaign, tactically sited close to our own bases. The huge irony underlines that history repeats itself. And for all the incredible advances of precision weaponry, the British Army will always need ground-holding infanteers, and therefore highly motivated reservists. Most reserves are paired with regular units to afford that best integration. For example, my battalion is currently paired with a 2nd battalion of regular soldiers. And throughout the months of September to December, we will be training alongside them in Kenya, and you'll get a feel for that today, but also Belize, out in the jungle, and Lithuania. Reserves train a minimum of 19 days a year. I expect my reservists to train up to 60, up to 100 days if they are more of senior rank, and that's to offer more value to our regular brethren. Reserves get paid for the training and work they do, and they are offered a wide range of courses, particularly in the field of leadership. And the course, of course, you as employers will benefit from that, and I won't labour the point that Steve has already made. Routinely, there are opportunities for those reservists to deploy with regular soldiers in operations. My battalion came back from supporting the UN peacekeeping line in Cyprus. But this is done on a voluntary basis, and that's an important point. The Army mobilises our reserves very carefully, and we work very closely with employers to make sure it works for you. And that is also very important. History records that when a nation is under significant threat, it is the reserves, the average civilian, from society that is conscripted to generate the mass required to win that war. The 100-year anniversary of the First World War armistice this November is a reminder of this. But in our unpredictable world that we all live in today, our politicians must safeguard the nation's capability to rapidly expand its military through our Army Reserve centres, which can be found in every town in the country whenever required. But putting warfighting and deterrence aside, the Army Reserve is also important in terms of our link with society, business and industry. Regular battalions are stretched. They're committed to tasks all over the world. We don't sell ourselves nearly as well. But currently every regular battalion has 2 or 3 countries across the world that they are tied to and regularly visit and train their soldiers as we currently stand. So this leaves reserves unit like mine to make that link with society and to recruit not only regular but reserves as well. Our officers are trained at the renowned Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, and our junior corporals and sergeants train at the world-class leading establishments throughout the UK. This means that your leadership, your management could benefit from employing both service leavers but also our reservists as well. And I just cite, I've written in my notes here, Amazon. So currently Amazon are contacting and headhunting both warrant officers and also officers as well to try and get them into their organisation. Anecdotally, my reservists tell me that reserve-friendly organisations are worth staying in. And that is a point I hadn't really thought about. Continuity of your staff, especially in this era, I know means a lot to you. And therefore, employing reservists will more than likely see them stay longer. In summary then, the Army Reserve would not survive without the continued support of business and industry, and of course yourselves. The world remains unpredictable. Having a competent, confident cohort of part-time generalists and specialists ready to support the regular army, and if the need arises to expand into large units, are vital to the defence of our country. And I invite you to ask questions now, or you can grab me later on afterwards. But thank you for listening.